As Captain of Industry enters its second year in early access, and with its first major update just released, we are presented with a unique opportunity to discover the untapped potential that lies within. Join me as I navigate the ever-evolving landscape of this ambitious title, examining its features, gameplay mechanics, and the overall experience it offers. By the end of this video, I aim to shed light on whether Captain of Industry lives up to this early access hype, or if it succumbs to the challenges that often accompany such an ambitious game. So grab your virtual hard hats and roll up your sleeves as I ask and answer the simple question: should you make time for Captain of Industry? Captain of Industry is a construction and tycoon style game with an automation and colony sim twist, and it attempts to combine these genres fairly equally and well. The game's story should feel familiar to most veterans of these genres, and instead of a crash-landed space adventure or an agent of some big corporate entity, you are a marooned captain with their crew on an abandoned island trying to survive by exploiting its resources and bootstrapping an industrial complex and growing a settlement till they reach spaceflight? It's a stretch, I know, but the encompassing narrative isn't why we play these games. It's the dopamine hit when we finally establish a fully automated manufacturing logistics pipeline from mined ore to rocket parts. And Captain of Industry does just that, from meticulously setting up strip mining operations, ensuring the most ideal pathing for your excavators to dig, deposit, and deliver, to arranging logistics between storage and manufacturing plants with delivery trucks, pipes, and of course conveyors. The game's terrain and elevation system allows access to multiple levels of resources in the game, but it also gives you the opportunity to dump multiple levels of waste to terraform the island to your liking, ideally right into the ocean to maximize your landmass for your industrial buildings and settlers. With the raw materials out of the ground, loaded onto your trucks, and processed in your logistics network, you will have to continuously monitor the whole chain to ensure smooth operation, as one dip in mining, power, fuel, or even production can cause a cascading failure across the whole system. Along with worrying about your industrial complex, you'll also have to manage and provide for your settlers and workers. You'll have to maintain their health, happiness by seeing to their needs, be it food, electricity, water supply, and waste and pollution management. The happier your people are, the more forgiving the game will be to your industrial operations, allowing you to trade on happiness for things like faster production rates or even direct resources. If these aren't enough mechanics in a game to worry about, Captain of Industry also has a seafaring exploration system, giving you the opportunity to trade and establish shipping lanes with other islands or settlements. But wait, there's more. Pirates are roaming the seas, so you will have to also manage and repair your ships, along with upgrading them with better engines, armor, cargo holds, and weapons. The game does give you sufficient tools to manage all this, from micromanaging specific routes and production rates to setting up alerts and alarms to warn you before critical resources run low, and graphs, lots and lots of graphs. Speaking of tools, the game's developers have tried their best to include every quality of life shortcut key building mode, including a planning mode and information display needed and expected from games like this. All these mechanics and depth are reflected in the size of the game's research tree, which is big enough to give any factory game enthusiast goosebumps. And in my 20+ hour playthrough so far, I am barely through the second tier of research, but I'm personally loving every second of it and looking forward to sinking more hours into the game. Captain of Industry does have a great in-game help and tutorial system that holds your hand almost every step of the way, and it doesn't unlock mechanics until it feels confident that you will get the gist of what you need to do. However, I did have to look up a few things, specifically terrain system and management, as well as needing help finding specific things on the UI. While the UI does look plain and basic, the game just had its first major update and polish pass, increasing the graphical fidelity of the units and buildings tremendously, with really good details and animations. Not to mention sound and music. As I didn't play before Update 1, I can't really provide a good comparison, but playing it now and flying over my factory and settlement is extremely satisfying, especially when zooming out and watching it do its thing. Unfortunately, you can't just sit back and watch it for long. A sticking point with the game for me is the constant need for monitoring, adjusting, and rejigging of your setup. This is exacerbated by the fact that unlike other games in the genre, redesigning your factory has a cost, and you are not refunded the full materials of your buildings when you demolish them, unless you research sufficiently for that. And you will want to move and demolish buildings, pipes, and conveyors around, especially during your first few playthroughs, as the further you progress, the more you realize you misplaced or would like to optimize placement of buildings, and the wasting materials, time, maintenance, and fuel of demolishing buildings does snowball into cascading failures I mentioned earlier. This is why the game gives you alerts, graphs, and planning tools, and I encourage you to research them early and commend the developer for including them. However, you can't plan for something without knowing about it or its implications later on, and you will need to restart multiple times after hitting a certain milestone in the game to be able to progress, as the cascading failures will be impossible to salvage. I've seen this game compared to Factorio, Satisfactory, or even Dyson's Sphere program, but those games don't really have a fail state, and Captain of Industry is not a sandbox game per se. While you will enjoy the mechanics, problem solving, and depth this game has to offer, the gameplay loop is different enough that it will provide you with a challenge, as you can't leisurely plan your factory as it accumulates resources in the background. Rather, if you leave the factory idling unpaused for too long, as you meticulously plan your buildings, or even overexpand by building too many things at once, you might hit that death spiral as your resources drain away. The game is slated to be in early access for at least another year, and to be honest, it feels fairly dense already. There may be some polish required for the UI design, game balancing and pacing, and maybe fleshing out of the exploration mechanic, but there is enough gameplay to warrant the price, which is in line with other games in the genre. I am a huge fan of any chill, laid-back automation and factory, set-it-and-forget-it games. And Captain of Industry is everything these games have except for the chill factor. However, it has made me appreciate that consistent resource micromanagement can be satisfying in its own way, and while starting over and over again can be frustrating, you will quickly learn to adapt for your next playthrough. Overall, the graphics and sound design are solid, with the gameplay getting high marks as well for me for the potential hundreds of hours of fun. While the difficulty is on the complex side and the UI design currently doesn't help, the tutorials do a great job of flattening the learning curve and guiding you through. The game, however, does lose some points for not having any trains, yet. So if you're a big fan of the resource management, factory, and automation genre, then I would highly suggest you make time for Captain of Industry. Thank you for joining me in this early access game review. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe for more content, follow me on Twitch for live streams, and always make time for games.